I still sleep with my bedroom door locked. Not because it makes me feel safer, but because of what happened the last time I trusted that I was alone. A year ago, I rented a small house just outside town. Old hardwood floors, a weirdly cold hallway, and a ceiling hatch in the kitchen I honestly thought was just sealed shut. For almost 3 weeks, everything felt normal. Then one morning, I found my coffee mug sitting on the drying rack, perfectly clean. The problem was, I distinctly remembered leaving it crusty in the sink before going to bed. I laughed it off, thought maybe I'd washed it while half asleep. Looking back, that was the first time someone else cleaned up after themselves. And that wasn't even the worst part. Because about a month later, I found a photograph of myself sleeping, taken from less than 3 feet away. No signs of forced entry, no fingerprints, no explanation. Just one sentence written on the back in shaky black ink. "You snore louder now." That was the moment I realized whoever had been watching me wasn't breaking into my house. They had already been living inside it. I was 27, working grueling 10-hour shifts at a local distribution center. The rent on the house was suspiciously cheap. The landlord blamed it on settling foundations and bad insulation. I didn't care. I just needed a quiet place to sleep. For the first few weeks, it was dead silent. Then came the micro shifts in my environment. The TV remote would be on the opposite end of the coffee table. Keys left on the counter would migrate to the entryway tray. Cabinet doors I knew I slammed shut would be cracked open an inch when I got home. I blamed exhaustion. Chronic sleep deprivation makes you paranoid. But then the bedroom door started acting up. Every night, as part of my routine, I'd close it completely. The latch would click firmly into place. Yet almost every morning, I'd wake up, and it would be open 6 or 7 inches, just enough to see the dark hallway outside. I tested the latch repeatedly during the day. It held firm. No draft in the house could push it open. Still, every single morning, it was waiting for me. About a month in, the sensory details shifted from visual to olfactory. I started catching whiffs of a heavy, pungent men's cologne. The kind older men wear, sharp sandalwood and cheap tobacco. It would drift through an empty hallway for 3 seconds, then vanish. One Saturday, I left to pick up groceries. I was gone precisely 35 minutes. When I unlocked the front door, the kitchen light was on. I am pathologically obsessive about turning off lights. I checked my electric bill later. Usage was flat. Yet, standing in my kitchen, I convinced myself I'd simply spaced out. I opened the fridge. Half my leftover pizza was gone. No roommates, no pets, just an empty cardboard box sitting on the middle shelf. Memory is a fragile thing. When you live alone long enough, you gaslight yourself into believing you're losing your mind. And that's precisely what they want you to do. 3 nights later, I woke up with a jolt. No nightmare, no external sound, just absolute, hyper-aware consciousness. I grabbed my phone from the nightstand. 3:17 a.m. Then I heard it. Knock. 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 3 slow, deliberate thuds. Not from the front door, not from outside, from directly behind my bedroom wall. Every hair on my arms stood up. I grabbed a heavy flashlight and tore through the house. Kitchen, bathroom, living room, closets, under the bed. Nothing. Every window was locked, every deadbolt set. I barely slept the rest of the night. But right before dawn, I noticed something that made my stomach drop into freefall. The hallway runner rug had shifted, just 4 inches to the left, exactly enough to cover a faint vertical scratch in the floorboards I'd never noticed before. By week 6, I needed undeniable proof. I bought 3 cheap indoor security cameras, one covering the front entry, one facing the hallway, one pointed at the kitchen. For 2 nights, nothing. On the 3rd night, the hallway camera glitched. Right at 2:58 a.m., the live feed froze. Not buffering, not static, just pitch black. It stayed completely dead for 16 agonizing minutes. When the picture finally flickered back online, my bedroom door was standing wide open. I pulled up the digital playback, scrubbing frame by frame. Nothing entered the frame. Nothing left. The footage had been cleanly excised, as if those 16 minutes had never existed. Except the door was open. I called the non-emergency police line. 2 officers came out, shined their flashlights around, checked the perimeter, and shrugged. One of them gave me a pitying smile and said, "Working warehouse shifts will play tricks on your eyes, kid. Get some sleep." I wanted him to be right. God, I wanted him to be right. 2 days later, I came home from work. The house was dead quiet. I walked into the kitchen and there it was, a fresh Polaroid sitting face down in the center of the butcher block counter. I didn't own a Polaroid. My hands shook so violently I dropped it twice before picking it up. The image showed me dead asleep, blankets pulled up to my chin, phone charging on the floor. Taken from an angle that meant the person was standing directly beside my bed, looking down at my face. I flipped it over. 6 words scrawled in thick marker. "You snore more than before." I didn't pack a bag. I grabbed my keys, got into my car, and drove down the highway until the sun came up. The next afternoon, my friend Jessica came over. I showed her the cameras, the timeline, the photograph. She looked pale, finally realizing I wasn't having a mental breakdown. "Someone's sneaking in through a crawl space," she insisted. We tore the place apart. Every closet, behind the water heater, under the kitchen sink. Nothing. Visibly shaken, she muttered an excuse and left. As her car pulled out of the driveway, my phone buzzed on the counter. An unknown number. One text message. Jessica forgot to turn her headlights on. My blood turned to ice water. I bolted to the front window. She was halfway down the block, driving completely in the dark, her headlights off. I grabbed my phone to call her, but as I looked out at the quiet street, I realized the terrifying truth. Whoever sent that text wasn't watching from a car down the road. They were looking out the window right beside me. That night, I decided I was breaking the lease. I didn't care about the deposit. While dragging a box across the hallway floor, my foot caught the edge of a baseboard, and a small, heavy brass key rolled out from the shadows. Attached to it was a faded paper tag with a single word written in faded ink. Attic. The leasing agent swore up and down the house didn't have an attic. I searched the ceiling panels until I found a narrow, painted-over wooden door tucked seamlessly into the shadow of the hallway ceiling, completely obscured by an old shelving unit. The brass key slid into the lock with a soft click. The pull-down staircase shrieked as I lowered it. A heavy wave of stagnant, freezing air spilled down, smelling distinctly of dust and old cologne. My flashlight beam cut through the dark. I froze. Hundreds, maybe thousands, of photographs, pinned to every single exposed beam and wall. Me sleeping, me cooking, me staring blankly at my phone on the couch. Some were old. Others had been printed that very morning. In the center of the dusty floor sat an old wooden chair, pointed directly at a dark, narrow crawl space cut into the peak of the roof. Then I heard it. Breathing. Slow. Shallow. Human. I lifted my flashlight toward the dark opening in the ceiling. For a fraction of a second, I caught the glint of 2 pale, wide eyes staring back at me, completely motionless. Then, a whisper dropped down from the dark. So quiet, I almost convinced myself my brain made it up. "You finally found me." I dropped the flashlight and ran out of that house and down the middle of the street, screaming for help. The police took it seriously this time. 4 cruisers, a canine unit, flashlights sweeping the roof space. They searched for 2 hours. They found dust. They found old insulation. They found no footprints. They found no sleeping bag. They found no food wrappers. The thousands of photographs pinned to the walls, gone. Every single one vanished into thin air before the officers climbed the ladder. The only thing left sitting in the center of the empty attic floor was one fresh, glossy Polaroid. It showed me, standing right there in the attic, looking up into the crawl space with a flashlight in my hand. The photo had been taken from an angle behind me, after the room had gone pitch black. No camera was recovered. No prints were lifted. The case went cold before the week was out. I moved 3 states away the next morning. New apartment, new locks, new phone number. I wiped my digital footprint clean. For almost a year, nothing happened. I started sleeping through the night. I almost felt safe again. Then, last Tuesday, I came home from my new job, unlocked my apartment door and looked down. Lying on the welcome mat inside my hallway was a plain white envelope. No stamp, no return address. Inside was a single Polaroid. It showed me, bending down right at that exact second to pick up the envelope. The photo had been taken from inside the apartment, less than 5 feet away. I turned it over. 4 words. Nice place this time. I called the police again. They found nothing. No prints, no forced entry, no signs of life. I've never found out who was living inside that house. Maybe they were hidden in the walls for decades. Maybe they followed me down the highway. Or maybe they never actually left. Now every single night, before I turn off the lights, I check every room, every closet, every corner. Not because I think I'll find someone, but because once you've lived with the feeling that another person has been silently sharing your home, you never really stop looking. Sometimes, the scariest intruder is the one who never had to break in, because they were already inside, waiting for you to notice.